I used to IV hella Chinese growth.
Did you really?
Hell yeah. Dude, I've IV'd everything. I IV so much.
Okay, so another question he has for you is, he says, another question for Bleu. IVGH, need I explain more? How did that come to be, and what's your favorite brand? Did you mention something about IV? Is that for me? I don't know.
Yeah, it's something that I messed with, at a certain time. I work with a lot of doctors. So it was a doctor that I was talking with, and he's like, and I was getting ready, it was for my last show. And we're talking about, the bioavailability, of, administration with GH. And I was running Serostim. And so we had talked about it. And at first I tried it, and I was just doing, my vein through my forearm. And then I was doing 4 IUs 4 times a day. And then I broke it down even further. I think it was like 3 IUs 5 times a day. I did it like for, I think 8 or 10 weeks. I don't remember exactly. I would have to get out my logs, but faster uptake. I mean, that's what it's all about, the administration and, the impact, I believe that, the bioavailability of like sub-Q is reduced a little bit, and it's not as reduced when you're doing it intramuscular. And then when you're doing it directly to the source, you're getting that impact in a concentrated form. But that's just something that I tried. But I was also on a lot of other things at that time that could have, contributed to my look at that time. It was pretty crazy because at that time, I was running the main things like, Prop, that's, the only test I use, Masteron, Trend, Winnie, stuff like that, just normal doses. But I was also using insulin around my workout. And it was pretty crazy because my low days of carbs during that time was 500. My middle of the week, I would do 800. And then on Saturday, I would do 1250. I could never do that in the off season. That was just absolutely insane. But I think just, things working synergistically, my metabolic state, everything was just insane. So it was something at that time, with my doctor friend that we wanted to try and document. I don't recommend any of my clients doing it. I've had a couple of clients try it, and we documented, but honestly, I think the difference with, bioavailability is not that, not that big of a difference.
Well, if you're shooting it 4 times a day, I think there's a benefit, but I guarantee most clients are not going to be able to afford 16. I use a farm GH.
Yeah, it was a one-time thing. It was between 8 and 10 weeks, and he wanted to document it as well because he's a head internal medicine doctor. So he wanted to document things, so it was kind of cool. And at that time, it was, obviously my physique was, very, it was highly responsive. So it was something to document, but it was a one-time thing. My wife was pissed, called me a crackhead, but I'll never do it again.
So 2 questions. Why do you prefer prop?
Prop?
Yeah. Testosterone prop unit.
Prop seems to work with me best. I believe that esters, can affect, people, even serotonin wise, I think, because fast or longer esters with me, which I tried in the beginning, I would always get anxiety. Even when I
completely agree with you. I believe that shorter esters are always superior. But the problem with the prop is this solvent issue or whatever. But other than that, it's obviously ideal. Comes in and out of your system. You get a little bit of a break, and that keeps your receptors sensitized to the testosterone.
Yeah. I love prop. It always worked great for me. Because back in the day, I tried Saucinon, got anxiety a day later. Enanthate, got anxiety. Cypionate, got anxiety. That's partially the reason I'm like so OCD with like dissecting a person before like, recommending anything, just because I fear them going through some of those same things that I did from messing around with different medications. So when I first hooked up with Hani, he wanted me, on sauce and some other things in the beginning, and it just was not happening. And, again, everything play by play. he's like, okay, let's try some faster esters. I want you to just mess with, some prop and tiny bit of EQ and some Anadrol. And that was butter. I mean, it was amazing for me. It worked perfectly. And I cycled that same way in my off season for, the next 10, 11, 12 years. I mean, so, and then, in 2011, I tried, I tried growth hormone and insulin. And then I found out that I was like hyper responsive, like very, very responsive. So that was just, kind of my, my bread and butter there.
So another thing is that, I mean, the main concern obviously with injecting IV, just for people to know, because I'm very involved in the addiction community and all that, the main issue honestly is that if you're shooting 4 times a day, like you were for a short period of time, that's something else. But say you were doing it all year, you're going to damage your blood vessels. Seriously.
Yeah, so absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Yeah, it was a one-time thing to experiment. I never did it again after that. We just documented it. It was, and I'm not going to lie, it was kind of a creepy, style of doing things. Like I said, my wife was pretty upset, but, we wanted to document some things, and we, never, ever, ever do it with something generic. This is with pharmaceutical, or you're going to end up, getting some dirty blood and you'll end up in the hospital. So, I mean,
I used to IV hella Chinese growth.
Did you really?
Hell yeah. Dude, I've IV'd everything. I IV so much shit. I IV my TB500, my BP7, my stem cells. I IV so much shit these days.
Oh, man. Be careful with that, bro. Be careful.
I reuse insulin needles too.
There's no. So Lord of Phantasm says coaches like Matt Jansen recommend metformin. And by the way, this is coming ahead of the question about insulin, about blood glucose levels. Remember, Bostin. So before that, though, coaches like Matt Jansen recommend metformin for all his athletes, whilst others do not due to the effects on mTOR. Thoughts? Can the effects be counterfeit? I don't know what he's trying to say. Counteracted with insulin? Or okay, he said counterfeit, but I don't know what he's trying to say with insulin.
I think Bleu likes metformin too, right?
I like metformin in certain situations. Yeah, I mean, it lowers, the production of the glucose in the liver, the absorption in the intestines, and you have lower blood sugar. That's going to lead to, lower, release of insulin by your pancreas, and you can burn more fat and keep things in check. I think it's really good in certain situations for a certain individual, but not always.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So I've been using metformin for 4 years straight, and I stopped using metformin recently because I started exercising and I care a little bit about my strength impact. So just for people to know the general consensus on metformin among the longevity community. If you're working out very intensely, like you're doing a lot of cardiovascular exercise, the metformin is a mitochondrial toxin. It will limit your respiratory chain and your ability, because of a couple of reasons, including lactic acid buildup, another reason. It will limit your athletic performance. It certainly will. If you don't notice, it's because you're not very strong or you're not very focused on your lifts. It will limit your performance. Personally now, I take metformin only on my off days. The half-life is still quite long, but I feel fine on the next workout day. The only reason I wouldn't take it while working out is because of its inhibition potentially of your athletic performance personally. But I think everything that Bleu said, of course, mainly about the effects on carbohydrate, metabolism in your body is really, and the effects on the liver as an organ are really beneficial. But will metformin turn off your mTOR while you're on androgens? No, it will not. We know that. People don't develop higher uric acid levels while on metformin, while on a lot of androgens. And uric acid levels will always go up when AMP kinase turns on and mTOR turns off. You're not going to turn off mTOR if you're on androgens and eating a lot of protein and taking metformin. You're going to get the blood sugar effects, the liver effects. Even if you're on 2 grams of metformin, you're not going to see much of an effect there. But you will get worse exercise performance.
Did Hani ever have you run metformin in contest prep, Bleu?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, he didn't even. At first, he didn't even want me messing with insulin, until he saw how it affected me. Then he was like, "Okay, keep doing what you're doing." I mean, everything was pretty minimal. He didn't want me ever touching synthol, any of that stuff. No.
Bleu, were you naturally skinny?
I grew up wrestling like most of my life, so I was always. I mean, I won state in 8th grade at 78 pounds. I mean, I was really small. I won the city championships at 98 pounds my freshman year. Like,
Oh my God.
I was really small. The heaviest I was my senior year was 123. So, I mean, I was always small, but like, you know, I always had like bigger calves and bigger forms and stuff like that because I was really short. And I always was very intrigued by bodybuilding, but it was one of those things in my time of, you know, wrestling, you know, collegiate and everything that, you know, they weren't big on us weight training because they wanted us, you know, so explosive and wiry and flexible. So I always stayed away from it. I didn't, you know, start lifting to way later after I already, you know, was, you know, had a wife and 2 kids. And I was like, you know, I'm going to go to the gym, you know, to get a break.